Hey, this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever shared, but I feel like if I don't get it out there, it'll eat me alive. My name's Mike, I'm 29, and last year I went through what I honestly believe was the hardest moment of my life, when I was this close to just throwing in the towel on everything. I want to take you back to that point, because it wasn't some Hollywood-style disaster, but a brutal chain of events that just crushed me slowly day by day. It all started when I lost my job. Not because I screwed up or anything, but because the company was downsizing. Suddenly, I went from feeling secure to waking up every morning wondering how I'd pay rent that month. That hit me hard, but what really pushed me over the edge was the breakdown of my relationship with Sarah, my girlfriend of 4 years. We'd been arguing more and more, and the stress of my unemployment made things worse. Then came the day she said, "Maybe we need a break," and it felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. Suddenly, I was alone, jobless, and feeling like I'd failed at everything. The next blow was my best friend, Jake, who I trusted like a brother, suddenly stopped answering my calls. I found out later he was hanging out with people I didn't even know, and honestly, it felt like he just dropped me without a word. The loneliness was suffocating. Around that same time, my car broke down completely, leaving me stranded on the side of the highway late at night with no one to call. I remember sitting there staring at the dark sky, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe I was done fighting. I was overwhelmed by this crushing feeling that no matter what I did, nothing was working out. And then, just when things seemed their bleakest, I got a phone call from a stranger. A woman named Lisa, who had found my wallet I'd dropped weeks earlier, called to return it. That tiny act of kindness shattered something inside me. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, there's a flicker of light. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, holding that wallet and thinking about all the moments I was ready to give up. But for the first time, I realized maybe giving up wasn't the only option. This story isn't clean or pretty. It's messy, full of sudden turns, moments of pure despair, but also flashes of hope that kept me barely hanging on. And honestly, it's been a hell of a ride figuring out how to climb back from that edge. I'm going to share the whole journey, from hitting rock bottom to finding a way forward. If you're struggling or on that brink, maybe my story can be a little light in your dark. After that night when Lisa called me about the wallet, something inside me shifted, but it wasn't like everything magically fixed itself. It was more like a tiny crack forming in a wall I'd built around myself, a crack big enough to let a little light in. I started reaching out to people, awkward, scared calls to old friends, trying to explain what I was going through without sounding like a total mess. Some answered, some didn't, and it hurt when the people I thought cared the most disappeared. But one person did answer, and it was my cousin Ben, who I hadn't talked to in years because we'd drifted apart after a family fight. He didn't judge, didn't ask for explanations, just listened. That meant more than I can say. Around the same time, I was trying to figure out how to pay my bills. The job market was brutal. Dozens of applications, endless waiting, and tons of rejection emails that felt like punches to the gut. I took gigs I never thought I would, from delivering food at night to working in a sketchy warehouse during the day. Every job felt temporary and exhausting, but I kept going because the alternative, giving up, was scarier than any exhaustion. Meanwhile, Sarah was popping back into my life, sending mixed signals that made me question if we were really done. One night she showed up at my door unexpectedly, tears in her eyes, saying she missed us and wanted to try again. I was torn. Part of me still loved her, but part of me was terrified of opening old wounds. We talked for hours that night, breaking down walls I didn't even realize I'd put up. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Then, one day while working a delivery, my car broke down again, but this time it was worse. Engine completely dead, no money to fix it. I was stuck miles away from home, no cell service, and honestly felt like life was laughing at me. I called Ben, who dropped everything and came to get me, reminding me I wasn't alone. That day stuck with me. How a random breakdown forced me to accept help and reminded me that sometimes pride has to take a back seat to survival. But it wasn't just external things breaking me down. The nights were the worst. Staring at the ceiling, battling anxiety that squeezed my chest so tight I thought I couldn't breathe. I felt like a ghost, living in my own life but not really present. I came dangerously close to giving up on everything so many times. The darkness was seductive in its silence. But each time a tiny voice inside whispered, "Not yet." And slowly, painfully, that whisper got louder. This part of my story isn't about triumph yet. It's about the mess, the struggle, and the cracks where hope sneaks in when you least expect it. I'm still here, still fighting, and that's the real win. So, after months of barely scraping by, juggling crappy jobs and emotional roller coasters, I started noticing little things that made me wonder if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely doomed. One afternoon, I was working a late shift at that warehouse, a thankless gig where the hours dragged like eternity and my body ached like I'd been hit by a truck, when out of nowhere, I ran into an old coworker, Melissa. We hadn't talked in years, but something about her smile that day cracked through my armor. We ended up grabbing coffee after my shift, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was able to talk about the chaos without feeling like a failure. Melissa didn't try to fix anything. She just listened, and that meant the world to me. That night, I got a message from Sarah, which threw me off. She said she was sorry for everything, that she missed how we used to be before all the stress tore us apart. I debated ignoring it because I wasn't sure if I was ready to revisit that mess, but something inside me said to reply. We ended up talking for hours, laying everything bare. The hurt, the hopes, the fears, and even though it was painful, it felt like we were both finally honest with each other. Then, bam, life threw another curveball. One morning, just as I was starting to feel a sliver of stability, I got a call that my mom was in the hospital. She'd had a stroke, and suddenly, everything that felt under control shattered again. I flew out to be with her, spending days at her bedside, watching this strong woman fight for her life. It was terrifying but also humbling, reminding me how fragile everything really is. At the same time, I was trying to hold myself together, juggling work, my fractured relationship with Sarah, and my mom's health. I felt like I was drowning, but I couldn't give up. Not now, not when my mom needed me. One night, exhausted beyond belief, I broke down in the hospital chapel, crying like I hadn't in years. But it was in that raw moment that I found a strange kind of strength, acceptance that life is messy and painful, but that doesn't mean it's over. After weeks of uncertainty, my mom started improving, and slowly, I started piecing my life back together, one messy step at a time. It wasn't easy, and I'm not done struggling, but for the first time, I believe that even when you're at your lowest, there's still a way forward, and sometimes that's enough to keep going. After my mom started showing signs of recovery, I thought maybe things would finally calm down, but life had other plans that seemed designed to test every ounce of my resilience. Just when I was getting back on my feet, my landlord dropped a bomb on me. He was selling the building and I had 30 days to find a new place. No warning, no chance to prepare, just a ticking clock on top of everything else. Suddenly, I was scrambling, calling every apartment I could find, trying to convince people to take a chance on a guy with shaky income and a history that screamed risk. At the same time, Sarah and I were trying to navigate this fragile new chapter. We weren't officially back together, but there was a tension between us, a hope and a fear tangled so tight I could barely breathe. One day, she showed up at my new place with a box of my things I'd left behind when the apartment was sold. We talked for hours, laughing and crying, and for a moment, I felt like maybe we could find our way back to something real. But then, out of nowhere, I got a call that hit me like a punch to the gut. My cousin Ben was in a car accident, badly injured and in ICU. It was like life was determined to keep me in survival mode, and I was running on fumes. I flew out to the hospital again, feeling the weight of helplessness crush me, but also this fierce determination to be there for my family no matter what. Watching Ben fight for his life was another brutal lesson in fragility and strength, and through those long sleepless nights, I realized how much I'd been running from pain instead of facing it. I started opening up more to the people who stuck around. Sarah, Ben, even Lisa, that stranger who found my wallet. And it was messy and scary and uncomfortable, but it was also healing. There were moments when I wanted to scream at the world, to tell it to stop throwing curveballs, but I learned that sometimes the hardest battles teach you the most about yourself. Slowly, I started rebuilding, new job opportunities, patching things up with Sarah, finding a new apartment that felt like home, and even making peace with the fact that some friendships end, while others become family. I'm still fighting, still healing, but I'm here, and that's what matters. Life isn't a straight path, and sometimes it's a hell of a mess. But every day I wake up is a chance to keep moving forward, no matter how slow or painful it feels. So, just when I thought things might finally settle down, life threw me another curveball that nearly broke me. I had just started a new job at a small startup that actually gave me hope, and Sarah and I were cautiously rebuilding something fragile but real. But one morning, I got a call that my dog, Max, had been hit by a car while I was at work. I dropped everything and rushed to the vet, the panic crushing my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. When I got there, they told me Max was in critical condition, and I sat by his side through the night, talking to him, promising he'd pull through. I felt utterly helpless, like I'd lost control over everything that mattered. Then came the financial hit. Vet bills piling up on top of rent and other expenses, and suddenly, I was sinking again, overwhelmed by stress and guilt. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was strong enough to handle all this pain and responsibility. The nights were the worst, lying awake, haunted by what-ifs and fears that kept me frozen. But through the darkest moments, I found unexpected support. Sarah, despite everything, showed up at the vet with me, holding my hand and reminding me that I wasn't alone. My cousin Ben sent texts of encouragement from the hospital, and even Lisa, the stranger who once called to return my wallet, checked in to see how Max was doing. Those small acts of kindness lit tiny fires inside me, fighting back the shadows of despair. And slowly, Max started to heal. He was a fighter, just like me, and that stubborn little dog gave me the strength to keep going when I wanted to quit. That chapter of my life taught me about resilience in ways I never expected, about how pain and love can coexist, and how sometimes the hardest moments can bring people together in ways you never see coming. I'm still here, still healing, still scared sometimes, but I'm learning that survival isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every time, no matter how many times life knocks you down. After Max started to recover, I thought maybe the worst was behind me, but life doesn't work like that, right? One afternoon, I got a call from my old boss who said there might be a chance to come back part-time at the company I was laid off from, but with no guarantees and less pay. It was tempting because I needed any stability I could get, but it also felt like going backward after everything I'd been through. I agonized over the decision for days. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were navigating this complicated dance of trying to be friends again, but with lingering feelings and old wounds that kept bubbling up. One night, out of the blue, she showed up at my door with a box of stuff I'd left behind, including an old mixtape we'd made years ago. Hearing those songs after everything felt like a punch in the gut, but it also reminded me of better times, and I realized I was still holding on to hope, even when I tried to convince myself not to. Then, the unthinkable happened. I got a call that my cousin Ben's condition had worsened. He'd been fighting for weeks, and suddenly, things took a turn for the worse. I rushed to the hospital, terrified and helpless again, sitting by his bedside, praying for a miracle. Those hours stretched into days, and I felt like I was stuck between grief and guilt, questioning every choice I'd made. At the same time, work pressures piled on. The part-time job was demanding, and I felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. One morning, after a night of almost no sleep, I broke down in my car, tears streaming down my face as I screamed into the empty vehicle. I was exhausted, scared, and so close to giving up. But then, just when I thought I couldn't take any more, Sarah called. She said something simple but powerful. "You're stronger than you think, Mike. I believe in you." That moment reminded me that even when you feel alone, there's someone rooting for you. And that sometimes the hardest moments are where you find the strength you never knew you had. I'm still fighting, still struggling, but I'm here, and that's something. By the time Ben was moved out of the ICU and into rehab, I was emotionally drained but somehow clinging to a fragile thread of hope. Watching him struggle with simple tasks was a brutal reminder of how much life can change in an instant, and it shook me to my core. Around the same time, Sarah and I were trying to rebuild trust, but old wounds kept reopening. One afternoon, out of nowhere, she dropped a bombshell. She'd been offered a job across the country, a dream opportunity she couldn't pass up. It hit me like a gut punch because it felt like everything I was fighting for was slipping away. We argued for days trying to decide what that meant for us. Was this the end, or a new beginning? Meanwhile, my own health started acting up. The stress had taken a toll, and I was dealing with constant migraines and insomnia. Every night felt like a battle against my own body, and some mornings I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Work was chaotic, but I pushed through, even when it felt like I was drowning in exhaustion. Then, out of the blue, a surprise visit from Lisa. Yeah, the stranger who once found my wallet, reminded me how small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect. She brought coffee and a goofy smile, and for a moment, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. One night, sitting on my porch with Sarah, we made a promise to face the uncertainty together, whatever came next. That promise became my anchor when the world felt like it was spinning out of control. Life was still messy, still full of pain and fear, but I was learning to find strength in the chaos, to hold on to hope even when it was hard. And while the hardest moments hadn't passed, I was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could make it through. Things were still far from perfect, but with Sarah's job offer looming and Ben's slow recovery dragging on, I was stuck in this weird in-between place, trying to hold on to what I had while knowing that everything was about to change. I started spending more time at the rehab center with Ben, watching him relearn how to do things most of us take for granted, and it was humbling as hell. Meanwhile, Sarah and I kept trying to figure out how to be a part of each other's lives even though the distance was creeping in fast. One night, after a long day at the rehab center, I came home to find a package on my doorstep. Inside was a journal from Sarah, a collection of her thoughts, fears, and hopes about us and her move. Reading it was like peeling back layers I never knew existed, and it made me realize how much she was struggling with this too. Around that time, my old job called again, offering a full-time position if I could start immediately. I was torn. Take the stability or keep chasing something uncertain but full of potential. I decided to take the job, even though it felt like giving up on the new life I was trying to build. The first weeks back were a whirlwind of catching up and trying to prove myself, but it also gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. But life wasn't done testing me yet. One night, just as I was starting to feel a bit more grounded, I got a call from Sarah. She'd accepted the job across the country and was moving sooner than expected. We cried on the phone, promising to stay in touch and keep fighting for what we had, but deep down, I knew things were changing for good. That same week, Ben took a step forward in his rehab. Small but huge progress that reminded me that healing isn't linear. Sitting in the quiet of my apartment, I realized that while life keeps throwing punches, it also gives us moments of grace and resilience. I'm still here, still struggling, still scared, but I'm learning to accept that's okay. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about surviving the chaos and finding pieces of hope in the cracks. By the time Sarah moved across the country, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to leap or hold on to the last threads of what we had left. The day she left, I remember driving to the airport with a heavy heart, replaying every moment we'd shared, every fight and every laugh. It was a brutal mix of grief and hope, because even though she was gone, I still believed in the possibility of us, even if it looked different now. After she left, I threw myself into work harder than ever, using it as a distraction from the emptiness that crept in when the nights got quiet. But no matter how busy I was, the silence reminded me of everything I was missing. One night, out of the blue, I got a text from Lisa, the woman who found my wallet months ago, asking how I was doing. It felt strange but comforting to hear from someone who had been there in a small way when things first fell apart. Our conversations grew from brief check-ins to longer talks, and she became this unexpected source of support. Around the same time, I got a call from Ben, who sounded stronger and more hopeful than he had in weeks. He told me about his progress and the small victories he was achieving, and I realized how much his fight had inspired me to keep going. But then came another curveball. My landlord informed me that the building was being sold again, and I had to move out within 2 weeks. The panic that hit me was immediate. I was exhausted, stretched thin, and the thought of starting over again felt overwhelming. I spent days searching for a place that wouldn't break the bank, juggling calls, visits, and paperwork while trying to keep my job and relationships afloat. Late nights were filled with tears and doubts, wondering if I was strong enough to keep pushing through all the chaos. Yet, amid the stress, I found moments of clarity. Little victories that reminded me I wasn't completely alone. The kindness of strangers, the support of family and friends, and the resilience I didn't know I had kept pulling me forward, one day at a time. I'm not done fighting, not by a long shot, but I'm still here, still breathing, and that's something worth holding on to. So here we are, the last chapter of what's been one hell of a ride. After moving into my new place, I felt this strange mix of relief and anxiety. Relief to have a roof over my head again, anxiety about whether I could really keep all these pieces together. Sarah was miles away, Ben was still fighting every day to get back to some version of normal, and Max, my stubborn dog, was recovering but still fragile. It felt like life was this constant balancing act on a tightrope stretched thin over chaos. There were moments I wanted to give up so badly, moments when the weight of it all pressed down on me so hard I thought I'd suffocate. But then I'd remember those tiny sparks. Lisa's unexpected kindness, Ben's fierce determination, Sarah's late-night calls when we just talked like old friends, Max wagging his tail like he believed we'd make it through. One night, sitting alone in the quiet, I realized that surviving isn't about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about showing up every day, no matter how broken or scared you feel, and choosing to keep going. I still struggle, some days are harder than others, and I'm not sure what the future holds. But I've learned that strength isn't the absence of fear or pain, it's the courage to face them head-on. So, if you're out there, struggling and feeling like you can't go on, know that you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest moments are where we find the most unexpected strength. Keep fighting. Keep holding on. Because even when it feels impossible, there's still hope waiting in the dark. Thanks for reading my story. It's been messy, painful, and real, just like life.